Hello everyone and welcome to my model car collection and also my channel. I'm going to be going over models in this channel, but in this case it's going to be model cars. I have models of other things besides cars, but cars are a big chunk of what I have models of or miniatures of. So we're going to go over this model collection here, and this right here is basically going to be an overview. I will eventually take every single car out and go over them one by one, what the car is like, meaning the model, what if it's a good model, if it's a cheaper model, a more expensive model, what they get right, what they get wrong, how it compares to the real car. And I also am going to go over the real car, some stats on the real car, well, when it was made and any fun facts about the real car. I'll also compare cars. There's a few times when there are cars that are similar to each other. Maybe they're the same car, but they're 1 year apart and they're sitting next to each other usually in that case. So I'll go over those kinds of situations. But this video is going to be an overview of the collection itself, just kind of introducing you to it, how it's laid out, and what you'll find in this collection. The first thing I'm going to go over here is what scale these cars are. That means the size. I'm going to break it down as if you know nothing about models. These cars are in a scale of 1 to 18. And just to let you know how scales work, you'll see a number in the beginning of the scale, and it's always 1. That stands for the real thing, in this case a real car. And then you'll see a colon, sometimes a slash, and the next number is going to tell you how much smaller the model is than the real car. In this case, 1 to 18 means that these models are 18 times smaller than the real car. So since the second number is how many times the model is smaller than the real thing, if the number is smaller, that means the model is bigger, which seems opposite of how it should be. But if you think about it, if the model is only, for example, 6 times smaller than the real thing, it's going to be bigger than a model that is 18 times smaller, like these cars right here. So that is actually a scale. There is 1/6 scale. These are really, really big models, and they're not very common. They're pretty rare, and you don't really find model cars that are bigger than 1/18. They exist, but they're not super common. 1/18 scale is really the biggest of the more common and highly or heavily or commonly collected scales. And just to demonstrate the size of 1/18, so here's a 1/18 car. This is a 1960 Chevy Impala, and it's about, well, it's almost 2 of my hands, much bigger than my hand. If we go smaller from here, a very common scale you'll see is 1/24, which is what this station wagon is. And remember, the number gets bigger as the car gets smaller. So this is 18 and this is 24. That's how many times smaller it is than the real thing. And here's another scale, 143. This car is even smaller. And this scale, 143, is so small I can fit it in my hand, versus 1/18, where it was really 2 of my hands. There are smaller scales even than this, and they would just get smaller and smaller from here, and the number would keep going up. But 1/18 is definitely one of the largest scales, and I love it because of all the details they can fit into a 1/18 car, all the things you can see that are highly detailed. You can see some pretty amazing detail in these cars, especially the higher end, more expensive ones. Things like the interiors being very detailed, and the wheels usually turn. And you can see, for example, on this car right here, you can see the interior just looks fantastic. There's even carpet in the interior. There's the little details around the seats, and also there's a little sticker where the manufacturer would put when the car was manufactured. And this particular car is a Pontiac, and you can literally read where it says Pontiac. It's just really cool. So that's the size of the cars, and we're going to talk about something else next. Next, we'll talk about what kind of cars are in here. You can see behind the case there's a couple of American flags because it's pretty much American cars in here. Everything that you see all the way from the top to the last shelf before the bottom is American cars. And then where you see the other flags down there, those are the foreign cars. About 90% of these cars are American cars. Now, the era that they're from, they are pre-1980, and really they're pre-1970. They focus around the 40s, 1940s, 50s, and 60s. Because those are my favorite eras. I didn't grow up in that time, but I just find an artfulness of the cars of that time. I just find them to be artistic and really interesting to me versus cars from any other era, really. I do have some stuff pre-1940s. I have some even teens and 20s and 30s. Not a whole lot. This is my personal opinion. I personally find those cars to be they look a lot alike. It's hard for me to tell them apart. That's my personal opinion. But what I do like about that pre-war era is just the fact that this was sort of a lead up to what came after. It's part of history, and I'm a fan of history in general as well, especially automotive history. So I view them as history, and that's my collection kind of does pay homage to that, just the history behind it. But why are the 1940s, 50s, and 60s my preferred era? Well, the reason why is because I like the artfulness of that era, how that era just embodied the car as an artistic medium, a way to express yourself artistically and put as many interesting elements into the designs as possible. They didn't even really have any clue or concept or care about safety, aerodynamics, fuel efficiency, and sure, that's something that if we owned those cars today we would probably not enjoy, but they're really interesting to learn about for that reason, in my opinion. They drew upon a lot of interesting elements like the space age or aircraft inspired elements. So let's talk about how the cars are organized. So if you look in the top of the case, you can see the oldest cars are up top, and it goes in chronological order from there as you go down. The cars get newer. You start off with the Model T. That is pretty much the oldest car in the collection, and then it goes up from there, goes from left to right on that top row, and then you drop down here and you go from right to left, and then you drop down again and you go from left to right, and you drop down again and you go from right to left, and that goes throughout the whole case. One thing that was really important to me, I always try to follow, is having the cars of the same parent company together. So these three cars in this little compartment here, this little section here, are all GM cars. The one on the far left is a Buick, and the other two are Chevys, but they're all made by GM. Move over here, and we are going up a year from 1954. That's the last one. We go up to 1955, and the one on the far left right there is a 1955, and the one in the middle is also a 1955, and the one on the right is a 1956. And these are all made by Chrysler. Two of them are Chryslers, and one of them is an Imperial. That's all made by the Chrysler Corporation. We move over here, we're still in 1955. We've got a Chevy up top, a Chevy station wagon on the left, and then a Pontiac over here. That's all GM. We move down here, we're still in 1955. These are all GM products. There's a Cadillac up there, a Buick right there, and an Oldsmobile right there. But that's all GM. We move over here, and we have the same situation. 1955, both of these are Fords. Over here, we have cars from, well, they're all from 1956 to be exact, but they're all different brands. We have a Mercury right here, a Lincoln right here, and a Continental up here. In that brief period of time where Continental was its own brand, it was not Lincoln, it was Continental. And at the end of the day, these are all Ford Motor Company products. And same here, these are both Fords. These are all Chevys. And We're all the way up to 1957 and now, and we have a Cadillac and an Oldsmobile, which are both GM. But it was extremely important to me that the cars all stay in the same parent company. Here we have an example where what the cars have in common here is their independence. They're not the big three. They're not Ford, Chrysler, or GM related. On the left-hand side is a Kaiser, and this one are both Nashes. Or here, where on the left-hand side is a Studebaker, and on the right-hand side is a Packard. By the way, I've got my little animated sign in the background. I did want to show that. That animated sign is for model train sets actually, but that's a version that you can buy and put it on a base and display it wherever you want. And it's animated, and it's apparently a real sign. There was a real sign in Florida that looked like that, and it's a very mid-century modern 1950s or 60s design, so I thought it fit pretty well in the case, and I think it's really cool. And don't forget, we will go over each car and its little quirks and features, as Doug DeMuro would say. Like this car has its own little quirk. It has a whole folding hardtop. So we will go over those little details and specific things that each car has. Well, I hope you enjoy this little tour of this little model car collection and some information about model cars and other things too. And if you enjoyed it, be looking forward to more videos in the future, and I hope to see you in the next video.